I never thought the day would come when I'd feel completely invisible in my own family. It started years ago, small things that I ignored because I loved my brother and I wanted peace. But over time, I realized he wasn't just selfish, he was calculating, patient, and willing to step over anyone to get what he wanted. My parents always favored him in subtle ways, giving him things I had to fight for, praising him more, trusting him more. At first, I laughed it off. I told myself I was overreacting, that I was imagining it. But the signs were there, clear as daylight, if only I had the courage to admit them. One evening, I walked past our old family home, the one I grew up in, and I noticed something strange. The windows were gone, the garden unkempt, and a for sale sign hanging crookedly. My stomach sank as memories of childhood laughter, birthday parties, and late-night talks with my brother filled my mind. That house wasn't just a building. It was our history, our past. And then it hit me, he had sold it without telling me. I felt a wave of betrayal that I couldn't ignore. I confronted him immediately. He shrugged as if it was nothing, as if our memories meant less than a paycheck. I remember staring at him, searching for any sign of remorse, and finding nothing. Nothing but smug satisfaction. That moment changed everything. I realized I had to stop being a passive observer in my own life. I had to take action, but I couldn't do it blindly. I needed a plan, patience, and a way to turn the tables without losing myself. The first step was understanding him. My brother thrived on arrogance, on underestimating me, and that would be his greatest mistake. I started documenting every move he made, learning his routines, the people he trusted, the deals he was involved in. It was exhausting, and sometimes I doubted myself, wondering if I was letting anger control me. But deep down, I knew justice wasn't just about anger, it was about reclaiming what was mine, about exposing truth. Days turned into weeks, and I felt like I was walking a tightrope. I had to appear calm, friendly even, while secretly plotting a response that would leave him speechless. He continued flaunting his success, unaware that every brag, every careless remark was feeding my strategy. One evening, as I watched him boasting about his new house and wealth at a family dinner, I felt a cold determination settle in my chest. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about balance, about setting things right in a world that had always tilted in his favor. I began reaching out to old family friends, neighbors, and anyone who had witnessed his manipulations over the years. Piece by piece, I gathered information, not to expose him immediately, but to understand how deep his betrayals went, how much he had really taken. What I found shocked me. There were contracts he signed without consulting anyone, promises broken, relationships he destroyed with his lies. I realized that the house was just the beginning, the tip of an iceberg that he had been hiding under for years. And I felt a strange sense of relief, as if understanding the full extent of his schemes gave me power. The next move was delicate. I couldn't rush it because he thrived on impulsiveness. I had to let him believe he was untouchable, that he had won completely. Meanwhile, I worked quietly to secure a position of strength, reaching out to people he had underestimated or wronged. Slowly, allies emerged where I least expected them. and each connection brought me closer to a climax that I could barely contain in my imagination. The tension was unbearable. Every time I saw him laugh, boasting about things he didn't deserve, a fire ignited inside me. But I held it back, knowing that patience would serve me far better than confrontation. Nights were the hardest. Lying awake, I pictured the moment he would realize he had underestimated me, the exact expression of shock that would cross his face. It became an obsession, but not a harmful one. It was a focus, a channel for all the years of resentment, the subtle injustices, the silences where I was ignored. I began keeping a journal, not just of events, but of emotions. Anger, disappointment, hope, strategy, they all had a place. It helped me keep a clear mind and reminded me that this wasn't about hatred, but about reclaiming dignity and fairness. Then came the day I finally put the first part of my plan into motion. I orchestrated a small but strategic move, something that seemed accidental but was calculated. It was enough to rattle him slightly, and I watched carefully as he tried to regain control. The look on his face, the sudden uncertainty, told me I was on the right path. I smiled quietly, but my heart was steady, not vindictive. This was about balance, about showing him that life had consequences, and that those who betray without conscience eventually face the truth. I knew there would be more challenges ahead, more risks, but the first crack in his armor gave me confidence. The house, which he thought was a final victory, was about to become the centerpiece of a revelation he would never see coming. I felt a strange mix of anticipation and calm. The journey wasn't over, but for the first time in years, I felt like I was no longer invisible, like my story mattered, and that I had the power to write its ending. Weeks passed, and I continued to weave my plan carefully. I maintained a normal life in front of him, smiling, pretending to be unaffected, while behind the scenes, I set the pieces into place. I contacted the buyers of his sold house, learning their intentions and the history of the transaction. They were unaware of the house's true value, its sentimental worth, and I realized that this could become a pivotal point in my strategy. It wasn't just about money. It was about revealing truth, about letting him witness the outcome of his careless arrogance. At the same time, I began reconnecting with old friends who had been subtly hurt by him, people he thought he could manipulate without consequence. Each conversation, each shared memory of his betrayals, reinforced my understanding that this wasn't personal, it was universal. Betrayal leaves traces, and people notice, even if quietly. I recorded these interactions carefully, making sure that when the time came, I could present the full picture without exaggeration, without drama. The evidence would speak for itself. The next phase involved patience. I had to watch him become increasingly overconfident, to let him believe that he had won completely, that he was untouchable. Every social event, every business interaction, every casual boast he made became a thread I could use. And then, one evening, he let his guard down completely. Over dinner with family friends, he mentioned casually that he had no idea who might ever regret selling the house, that he had gotten exactly what he wanted. I listened quietly, hiding the spark of anticipation in my chest. That was the moment I had been waiting for, the exact words that confirmed he believed himself superior. that he thought he was beyond reach. That night, I started finalizing my approach. It wasn't about confrontation. It was about unveiling the truth in a way that would hit him where it hurt most, not pride, not money, but reputation. I reached out to the buyers, sharing stories of his manipulations and oversights, giving them insight into the person they had unknowingly trusted. At the same time, I prepared letters and documents for family and friends, pieces of the puzzle that would align perfectly when revealed. Timing was critical. I knew if I acted too soon, he would adapt. Too late, and the impact would lessen. I had to orchestrate it so that every revelation landed simultaneously, like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. As I planned, I reflected on our childhood. I remembered moments of laughter, the dreams we shared, the promises we made. It pained me to realize that those memories had been tainted by his selfishness, but it also reinforced my determination. This wasn't just revenge, it was restoring truth, showing that actions have consequences and that betrayal, no matter how cleverly hidden, always leaves traces. The final stage required courage. I had to face him indirectly, not with anger, but with precision. I had to maintain my calm, my composure, my innocence in the eyes of others, while letting events reveal his true nature naturally. The day arrived when the first part of the plan unfolded publicly. The buyers, intrigued and slightly shocked by the information I had shared, began asking questions, reaching out to him in confusion. My brother's carefully maintained facade started cracking. He attempted explanations, excuses, half-truths, but they only highlighted inconsistencies. The tension at family gatherings became palpable. Friends who had once been silent witnesses now observed closely, sensing the subtle unraveling. I watched, patient and composed, letting the scene unfold naturally, knowing that I had orchestrated every detail. He grew defensive, frustrated, and increasingly aware that he was no longer in control. Every boast, every careless remark he had made came back to haunt him. The look on his face when he realized that even strangers could see through his facade was priceless. I didn't gloat. I simply observed. There was a strange satisfaction in knowing that truth had power greater than anger, that patience could accomplish what confrontation alone never could. That night, I reflected on how much I had grown through this process. I had learned patience, strategy, empathy, and the subtle art of observation. Revenge, I realized, was not just about action, it was about timing, understanding, and restraint. And while the events were far from over, I felt a profound sense of justice settling over me, as if balance had been restored, not by force, but by truth revealed carefully and deliberately.